Hello, my name's Julie Barton. I'm the Risk Services Director for the Asia Pacific region. I've worked for Atradius for almost 30 years now in a number of different roles, mostly related to the risk services side of the business and mostly related to emerging markets such as South America, Africa and Asia Pacific. The Atradius Payment Practices Barometer for Asia Pacific examines trade credit supply within the region and also normal payment terms and behaviour. It can actually give you as a customer an insight into late payment trends, supply of credit, normal payment terms and actions you can take to mitigate risks of trading within the region. We've actually examined 8 different countries from the emerging powerhouses of India and China through major trading hubs like Hong Kong and Singapore and more mature economies like Japan and Australia and also Indonesia and Taiwan are surveyed. We also have an overall regional summary which pulls all of the information together, and all of these reports are available on the Atradius website. The Asia-Pacific region is absolutely huge, and as I mentioned, we cover 8 different countries. I'm going to talk about the overall region, general information, but I'll draw contrasts with the individual countries as we go along. There are 5 points I'd like to particularly emphasise. The first is the availability of trade credit within the region and normal terms of payment. What we actually see is that about 45% of respondents to the survey said that they would supply on trade credit terms within the region. However, there's a big range around that, with Japanese respondents actually offering credit in 2/3 of cases and Chinese only in 1/3. Also, if you look at normal terms of payment, the average is 31 days, which is the same as a year ago. However, the range around that is Indonesia with the longest average terms at 42 days, and Hong Kong and Australia with the shortest at only 24. The second area is what were the main reasons for supplying on trade credit terms. Most respondents said it was as a tool to establish long-term trading relationships, and importantly also to allow them to compete with other suppliers who also offer open account terms. The third area is trends in payment behaviour. What we see is that 30% of the total value of invoices are paid late, with 10% of invoice values still being unpaid more than 90 days past due. This has increased since a year ago. The fourth area I'd like to look at is uncollectible receivables or debts written off. The average across the region is about 5%, but that covers quite a range. In domestic transactions, India has the highest level of uncollectible receivables at 7%. Japan is only just over 2%. If you also look at foreign receivables, we see similar sorts of trends, with Hong Kong and Singapore having higher levels of uncollectible receivables at 7%, Japan, again, only around 2%. And the fifth area is what are their expectations for the next 6 months? Well, most respondents actually felt it was going to get worse in the next 6 months, and in anticipation of that, they were going to carry out more credit checks on their own customers. The most pessimistic business sector respondents were in manufacturing, retail, wholesale and distribution. Average terms of payment on invoices are 31 days, but what we see from the survey is that average day sales outstanding is 44 days, which indicates that a substantial number of invoices are being paid late. In fact, 30% of respondents said that their day sales outstanding had increased from a year ago. The main reason for payment delays was different between foreign and domestic business. For foreign business, complexities of the payment systems and inefficiencies of the banking system were cited as the main reasons. However, for China, the third highest reason were quality disputes over goods delivered and services rendered. For domestic business, the main problems were short-term cash flow and access to bank funding. Let's look at the supply of trade credit. The average figures for Europe, North America and Asia Pacific are very similar, but Asia Pacific covers quite a range, as we've already discussed, and most respondents were more selective about who they offered trade credit to. The main reasons for offering trade credit are also similar across all the regions, using it as a tool to establish long-term trading relationships. However, one difference that we do see between Asia Pacific and North America in particular is that in North America, 24% of respondents actually used it as a means of short-term trade financing, whereas only 12% of respondents in Asia Pacific used it for the same reason. In terms of payment behaviour, Asia Pacific has the shortest average terms of payment at 31 days compared with almost 38 days in Europe. Interestingly though, Asia Pacific customers do offer early payment discounts quite often, with almost 60% of respondents offering early payment discounts. However, these aren't taken up as often as early payment discounts in North America. The fourth area, debts written off. North America and Asia Pacific, both very, very similar figures and both higher than Europe, which I expect is a reflection of the legal systems. And in terms of expectations, Asia Pacific customers are slightly more optimistic than their counterparts in Europe and North America. The economic forecasts for Asia Pacific are still relatively positive against flat forecasts for the Eurozone and North America at best. However, there are still challenging times ahead, and Europe and North America are very big consumers of Asia-Pacific goods, so obviously there's going to be an impact of flat forecasts and uncertainty in those areas in respect of Asia-Pacific business. We need to differentiate between domestic and foreign transactions. With domestic transactions, there's an average of 30% overdues, but the countries range around that, with countries over 30% being the likes of China, India, Hong Kong and Singapore, but Japan is only 20%. Now, access to short-term funding is clearly an important reason within that, with tight monetary policies in countries like China and much more relaxed availability of short-term funding in Japan. For foreign transactions, the countries experiencing the most payment delays were Hong Kong, Singapore and Australia, with inefficient banking systems, the complexity of payment procedures and disputes over invoices being the most common reasons cited for those payment delays. Though interestingly, in Indonesia, 63% of respondents said the reason for payment delays was due to inefficiencies of their banking system. There are many similarities between the credit management practices of organisations in Asia Pacific and the rest of the world, and obviously the size of the business and their experience in trading is the key factor there. Active credit management is key in developing active credit management practices in terms of checks on your buyer's creditworthiness. These are of increasing importance in the Asia Pacific region for companies of all size. One area where we do see a slight difference is that in Asia Pacific, customers are more likely to deal on cash terms or secured terms of payment than in other regions of the world. The key thing is knowing your customer and building a relationship with them. You can't overemphasise the importance of good credit management practices as well, including carrying out creditworthiness checks on your buyers and payment track records. A Tradius, of course, monitors countries, trade sectors and individual companies on a daily basis and does thousands of risk assessments every week. As part of that, we provide you with credit limit decisions that will help steer you away from poorly performing and deteriorating risks. You can also access the Tradius buyer ratings on the website, and we have a team of expert people on the ground in the Asia Pacific region, so if you do encounter payment difficulties, contact your account teams or our local special risks teams and we'll be happy to advise you on the best way to minimise risks.